Begin today the Gemara at the last line on Daf Nun Zayin Amud Beis. The Gemara continues here talking about how many people were in the city of Beitar that was wiped out in that time. Amar Abba Baba Chan Amar Rab Yechanan Arboim Sa Ketzutzei Tefillin 40 Sa'ah, certain measurement of Ketzutzei Tefillin. Rashi says Ketzutzei Tefillin refers to the bottom of the Tefillin without the Ritzuis of the Tefillin. Nimtzu beroshe haruge Beitar were found on the heads of the Yidden that were killed in the city of Beitar. Rabbi Yanai v'Rabbi Shmuel Amar that it was more, it was 3 times as much. Shalosh kupos shel arbaim arbaim sa. 3 boxes of each 40 saw of these bottom of tefillin were found, which means 120 saw of tefillin. V'masnita tana, in a brayso we learned similar to what Rabbi Yanai said. Arbaim kupos, that there were 40 boxes shel shalosh saw, and each one was of 3 saw of these bottom of the tefillin. So now the Gemara explains, even though it seems like there's a machlokes here, the first opinion here, Rabbi Yechanan said that it was just 40 saw, and Rabbi Yanai and the Brayse says that it was 3 times as much, it was 120 saw of these bottom of the tefillin. But v'loi pligi, there's no argument here. Ha the reisha and ha the dara. When it said that it was only 40 saw of tefillin, that was the tefillin shel yad, the tefillin that's placed on the arm. Because the tefillin shel yad has only one bias in it, so in those times at least, it was made smaller. But the tefillin shel reish, which has to have 4 bottom in it, and you have to place 4 parshias in it, so therefore it was made larger, so it was 3 times as much of the bottom of tefillin in these boxes. So Rashi says, even though you would expect that it should be 4 times as much, because the bias of the shel reish has 4 and not 1. Nevertheless, the 4 bottom of the shel reish are made smaller than that 1 bias of the shel yad, so therefore it's only 3 times as much. Amar Rabasi said, Arba kabin moyach, or some agairis of the Arba kabin moyach tinoikis. There were 40 kabin, also a certain measurement, of the brains of the children that their heads were smashed on this rock here, nimtzu al evanachas, were found by 1 stone there. Ula said, Tishas kabin, that it was 9 kabin. Amar Rav Kahana, v'itei meshila bar mori, my kara, what's weird? We see a pasuk that indicates this, that will happen. Baz Bavel, Hashaduda, the daughter of Bavel, which was robbed from Ashrei she shalmachav v'gayme. Happy is the one that does this to you. Ashrei she yoiches, grabs hold of you v'nipet as elalayach alasala, and smashed the skulls of the children on this rock. The pasuk says, Bnei Tzion, the children of Tzion. This is an Eicha. Hayikarim, the precious Bnei Tzion, Hamusulaim bapaz, which are Musulaim bapaz. What does Musulaim bapaz mean? My Musulaim bapaz, Ileime dav mechape bepiza. Does Musulaim bapaz mean that they were covered with paz, which is a very special, expensive, rare kind of a gold? And the Yidden were so wealthy and they were covered with this gold. But for Amri de Rab Shila, that can't be, because by Rab Shila they taught Tarti miskeli istiri piza nochas balme. 2 measures of istiri, a certain kind of coin or a certain measure of pisa, of this special gold, came down into the world. Chode b'Roimi, and 1 came down to Rome, and v'chode b'kol alma. Another measure came down to the rest of the world. So you see that this pisa, this gold, didn't even come down to the Yidden in Eretz Yisrael. It came down in other places in the world. So how can we say that Yidden were covered with this gold? Ella, the answer is, it's a different pshat. That the Yidden were so beautiful that they would actually bring disgrace to this gold when you looked at the beauty of the Yidden, because the Yidden's beauty was much more even than someone that was covered with this gold. So the taich of Misulaim here, according to this pshat in the pasuk, is that Misulaim means that Yidden are praised by this beauty that they had. Like Soilu Soilu, Rashi brings over here another lashon of a pasuk. It means that the lashon of praising Yidden. So the Gemara now explains based on this, Meikare, in the beginning what happened was, Chashivi de Reimoi, the prominent Romans, have a Nikiti, Bulyoine de Gushpanki, they would have their signet rings that had these beautiful images on it, so they would bring it with them, Mishamshi Arsayu, and they would have relations with their wives, and they would show their wives first these beautiful images in the signet rings, because when she looks at this beautiful image, it has an impression on her regarding the child that's born. It should have the beauty of this image. But then when they saw the Yidden and how beautiful Yidden are, So Maisi b'nei Yisrael, they took the little children from Yidden, v'asri b'karei de parayu, and they tied them to the legs of their beds, and Mushamshi, and then they had their wives look at the images of these beautiful children, and that's when they had relations with their wives. So the Gemara says about this, Amri lechad lechavre. So these children, they were tied to the beds. So one said to his friend, Ha heichiksive. Where do we find in the Torah that it's written such a level of punishment that we're going to suffer? Amalei. So he answered and said, the pasuk says, Gam kol cholev v'chol makkah shaloi kasu b'sefer Torah zeis. In the end of the Teichacha, it says that even those things that were not specified and are not written clearly in the Torah will also happen to you, and it refers to such a kind of thing, that the Yidden are tied to the beds of the Romans. So Amar, his friend that heard this pasuk, he asked his friend, Kame marchikne miduchte plan. Here we're learning in Chumash, and they were holding somewhere in that in Chumash Devarim, not far from Parshas Kisavai. So he asked him, how far are we from here learning this pasuk that you just quoted for me? Amalei, Ingid, it's not too far. We're getting close to that pasuk a little bit. Puste upalge, another page and a half, and you'll get up to that pasuk yourself. Amalei, so his friend said to him, Imatoi legabe, if I would come to this pasuk that you just quoted for me, la itzrichilach, I wouldn't need you to explain to me that that's what this pasuk means. Or according to some, what he's saying is that now that the pasuk here says kol choli v'chol makkah shaloi kosov, so even if the Torah doesn't, even if we don't have to say that the pasuk is being merame specifically to this suffering, because the pasuk says kol choli v'chol makkah, so obviously it includes everything. Amar Rav Yehuda Mashmo Mishum Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. What's the meaning of the pasuk where it says Eini oilala nafshi? My eyes are suffering or causes the suffering for my soul. We call B'nai Siri from all the daughters of my city. So what this refers to is again to the city of Beitar. Arba meyes batik nesiyas hayu bekrach Beitar. There were 400 batik nesiyas shuls in the city of Beitar. Ubechol achas v'achas. And in each one of these shuls, hayu ba arba meyes malamde tinoikis. There were 400 teachers of children. And v'chol echad v'echad. And each one of these teachers, hayu lefanav, had in front of him Arba Meis Tanoika Shabis Rabban, 400 children learning Torah. So again, that's 400 times 400 times 400, whatever it comes to. Now, Kishahaya Oyev Nichnas L'Sham, when the enemy came and attacked Yidden and came into the city of Beitar, so originally the Yidden, the children were learning Torah, and they were very, very confident in the chus of their Torah that they're going to be able to fight them. And the children used their pens or maybe their sticks that they used to show the place in the learning. They took that and they would daikrin, they would go and pierce them, or they would hit them with these sticks. But then eventually, when the enemy was stronger and they captured the whole city, which is the goyim that placed siege in the city, and they capture them. So they took them and they tied them all up and they burnt them all in the fire, and together with their scrolls, right? Yeah. So this is the Eini Oilul Nafshi. Tana Rabbanon and Abraisi B'Lord Ma'aseh Rabbi Shua ben Chananya. There was the story with Rabbi Shua ben Chananya. Shaholach lekrach gadol shebereimi. He went to a big city in Rome. Omruloi. So they told him there, Tirek echad yesh beveisa asurim. There's a child there that's in prison. Yifei einayim v'toiv roi, which beautiful eyes and very good looking. V'kavtzaisa of studis le'taltalim, and he has beautiful, the hairs, his payas are beautifully curled. Holach v'amad al pesach beis asurim. So Rabbi Shua ben Chananya went there and stood at the door, the entrance of the prison. And Omar, he said the pasuk, Mi nosan le'meshise Yaakov, who gave Yaakov over to these robbers, and Yisrael obeizes him, and the Yidden to the obeizes, the one that are plundering. So this child in prison heard what he said, the pasuk, and he answered him, V'amar, Haloi Hashem, that's the Eibishter Zu, Chatanole, that we sent to him. V'loyavu b'drachav, because we didn't want the Eibishter's ways. Haloich, we didn't want to go in his ways. V'loi shama b'teirasai, we didn't listen to his Torah. Amar, Rabbi Shua ben Chananya said, Muftachani boy, I am assured with this child, Shemayre Hayra b'Yisrael, that one day is going to come and teach Torah for all Yidden. And then he took a shvua in the service of the Beis Hamikdash. It's a term of a shvua. She'eni zaz mikan, that I will not move from here until I'm going to redeem him for any money that they say I have to pay for redeeming him. So Amru, they said, zaz misham, he didn't move from there, and he redeemed him, and he paid a lot of money for this. And here Taisus brings this up earlier in the Masechta, or Taisus over here as well, it talks about this. Before we had a whole discussion about when you're allowed to redeem someone from captivity, and you shouldn't pay a crazy amount of money in order that they shouldn't do this again and so on. But over here, because it was Sakonis Nefashis, so he was allowed to redeem him. Not many days passed, and he came to actually teach Torah for Yidden. Manu, who was this child? This is Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha. He was Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha that taught Yidden Torah, and he was a Kohen, as we'll see as the continuation of the Gemara. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. Again, Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha could be. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Ma'isa b'bnoi b'bito shel Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha. Now there was a story with the son and the daughter of Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha. Shenishbu l'shnei adainim. They were also captured, but by two different masters. Now Luyamim came one day. Nizdavgu shneim b'mokem echad. These two masters were in the same place. One master says, Yeshli eved she'ein ki yofeh b'chol olam. I have a slave that there's no one as beautiful as him in the entire world. And the other master says, Yeshli shivcha. I have a maidservant she'ein b'chol olam kula ki yofeh, and that there's no one as beautiful as her. So Amru, so these two masters said to each other, let's marry the slave and the maidservant to each other, and then they'll have beautiful children, and we'll divide the children amongst ourselves. So what did they do? They didn't know that these are brother and sister. They brought them into the same room. And these two that came into the same room, they didn't even look at each other, they didn't recognize each other. It was dark. One sat in one corner, and the maidservant, she sat in the other corner, and one of them said, and they were told that they were getting married to each other. So one of them said, I'm a Kayin, the son of Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha, Kayin Gadol. Esa Shivche, I'll marry a maidservant. And the other one said, Ani Kehenes bas Kainim Gedolim. I am a Kehenes, the son of Kainim Gedolim. And Nasil Evet, I can get married to a slave. Ubachu Kalalayla. And the whole night they were crying about their predicament. Then Kivin Shala Amuda Shachar. As soon as the break of dawn and it was light in the room, Hikiru Zeh Zeh. They recognized one another. The Naflu Zeh Al Zeh, and they fell on each other's the gob, and they cried very, very bitterly, until the neshama flew out of their body. It's on them that Kirmia laments and says, Al Eila, Ani B'chia, on these I cry, Eini Yardamai. My eyes come down water tears. Reish Lakish said, Maise Bishachas. There was a story with a woman, Sofnas Bas Pniel Shma. Her name was Sofnas Bas Pniel. Why did she have such a name? Sofnas Shakal Tseifim Biyafya. She was so beautiful, everyone looks at her beauty. And Bas Pniel, what does this mean? Bitay Shel Kohen Gadol. She was a daughter of the Kohen Gadol, Sheshimish Lefnai V'Lifnim, that serves inside in the Kodesh HaKadoshim of the Beis HaMikdash. Shenisal Basha Boy Kol Alayla. So there was a guy that captured her and he violated her the entire night. Then Lemachar, the following day, Helbisha Shiva Chalukim. He dressed her with seven garments. He took her out into the marketplace to sell her. Comes a person which was very despicable, and he says to the one that's selling her, I want you to show me your beauty. So she's wearing all these garments. I want you to remove it and show me your beauty. So he said to him, Reika, you empty person, if you want to take her, take her as she is. There's no one that's beautiful as her in the entire world. But this buyer says, Afal Pikain, nevertheless. Hifshita Shisha Chalukim, he took off 6 of the garments that she was wearing, and a Shvi, the 7th garment, he saw that he was going to take it off. So the 7th garment, Karasa, she tore it off, Vinispalsha Ba'afar, and she rolled in the dust. Because she wanted to not show her beauty, so she rolled herself in dust. And then Amr Lefanov, she says today, the Master of the universe. Even if on us you don't have any mercy, but al kedushas shimcha gibor lamalei on your mighty name, why don't you have rachmanis? Because when Yidden are being disgraced this way, it's a disgrace with Eibish's holy name. And it's on this that Yirmiyah is lamenting and says, Bas Ami, the daughter of my nation, Chigri Sak, is wearing sackcloth, Vespalshi Be'ofen is rolling in dust, Evel Yachad Asilach, this is a mourning of every individual, Mispat Tamrudim, the eulogizing very bitterly. Kipisam yavi ashayda dalenu, because suddenly the robbers came upon us. So the Gemara teaches when it says alenu, who's alenu on us? Alecha loy nemar, doesn't say upon you, upon Yidden. Ella alenu kaviyachal, the Eibishter includes himself together with Yidden and says upon us, which means alai v'alecha b'shaydet. When the robbers come and do all these suffering for Yidden, this is a suffering for the Yidden and for the Eibishter himself kaviyachal. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Ma'idich, what's the meaning of the pasuk? Ve'ashku gever ubeisai, and they oppressed a man and his home and his wife. Ve'ish nachlasei, and a man and his inheritance. Ma'iseh v'adam echad. So here, this pasuk, the Gemara is going to say that we see the behavior of Yidden in that times and why it happened that the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, because it was a story with a person. Shanasan Einav Be'eshes Rabbi. He was a servant by his master, and he saw the wife of his master, and he decided that he wants to marry her. We're not talking here about a teacher that taught him Torah, but we're talking about his master that taught him a trade. He taught him, he was a smith. So what did he do? One time, Hutzrach Rabbi Lilvus. His master was looking to borrow money from someone. So he tells his master, Shagir Ishtecha Etzli, you can send your wife to me, Va'alvena, and I'll give her the money, I'll lend her the money. So this person, the master, Shigir Ishtei Etzloi, he sent his wife to his servant, Shah Ima Shloisha Yomim, he kept her by him for 3 days. So now the master sees his wife is not coming back, Kidim Uba Etzloi. So he came to his student and asked him, what's going on, where's my wife? So the student lied and said, Ishti sheshigarti lecha. Again, this is first the master speaking. He asks his student, Ishti sheshigarti lecha, my wife that I sent to you, heichani. What happened to her? Where is she? So the student answers, Ani pitarti alter. I sent her off immediately. I gave her the money and sent her off. However, I heard that there were other youngsters that violated her on the way, and she sinned with them. So the master says to the student, what should I do now? Now my wife went and did such kind of things. I don't want to live with her anymore. So what should I do? So the student says, if you listen to my advice, Gersha, divorce her. The master says, but the payment of the ksubah is a very large sum. I can't afford it. So the student here says, Ani alvacha, I'll lend you the money, and v'tenla ksubasa, you can give her the ksubah. The master got up, v'girsha, and he divorced her. So now the student went and fulfilled his wish, v'nosa, and he married her. Kivin shigias manoi, now the time for this master came to pay his loan for the ksubah that he had to pay for his wife. And he didn't have money to pay. So the master tells now to this student of his, that was a student and now married his ex-wife, he tells him, Boi v'asei imi b'chayvach, come and you'll work for me for your loan. So you'll work for me instead of paying the loan. And they, this new husband and wife here, were sitting and eating and drinking. And the master, and he was standing there serving them and giving them to drink. And there were tears that were coming out of his eyes, falling into the cups of the drink that he was serving them. Now look what happened over here with his wife and this student of his that stole his wife from him. It's not what happened at that time. This Chatim, Gzardin, the decree that the Beis Hamikdash should be destroyed was sealed. V'amrila, and others say that it's even before this whole story happened over here, that he came and was serving them, but it was al shtei psilois b'neir echad. The very fact that there are 2 wicks that are in one candle, in one vessel with one candle, that itself was the issue here. So Rashi says this is a mashal for an Eshes Ish, the very fact that he had a relation with this person's wife even before, when he sent the wife to him, that itself was the reason why the Gzar Din was sealed for the Yidden. Okay, this is the conclusion of the whole sugya, describing the incidents and all the stories and events that happened by the Churban. Now we'll go back to the halacha, how this all began with the Sekrikim, which the Sekrikim were these Goyim in the times of the Churban that would threaten to kill Yidden, and they would confiscate properties. In order to the Yidden's life should be saved, they would take these properties away from Yidden. So what did it say in the Mishnah? Lakach min ha-Sekrikim v'chulu. If a person first buys the property from the Sekrikim, And then he goes and he buys the property from the original Yiddish owner. So the Mishnah said that the sale is null and void, because the Yid could say, when I sold it to you, I didn't really mean to sell it to you. It's because I was afraid of the Sekrikin. Or even, the Rashi says, he says to this Yid, I wanted you to buy it from the Sekrikin, so it'll be easier for me to deal with you, to get it back from you. So therefore, there's no sale at all. So on this Rav said, Loishanu, that's only said, Elo de Omaloi lechazeku kni. If the Yid that sold it after the Sekrikin sold it, that's only if the Yid says verbally, here, go and make a chazakah and acquire this property. So he gave him a verbal agreement. So that verbal agreement is meaningless. But if this owner, the Yid, went out of his way more, and he wrote a whole document that he's giving it to him, that he's selling it to him, then kana. Then the Yid can't say that I only gave my agreement because I was afraid of the Sekrikin. Why did you go out of your way and write a star? If you're writing a star, so that's an indication that you agreed to the sale. Shmuel says, Af b'shtar nami loikana. Even if you are writing a star, it's still not a raya that you mean to sell it to him, because it still could be that you did it because you're afraid of the Sekrikin. If you write a star and you specify in the star clearly that if this star will be confiscated from you by any of the loans that I owe someone, and the Balchayv will come and take it away from you, I take responsibility to reimburse you for that. So you're not stop writing a star, but you're writing a proper star with all the details, then I see that he's serious about the sale. Tan Yekuvah say to Shmuel, we learned in the Braise, like Shmuel said, Rav Shimon ben Elazar says, and this is a similar halacha to the halacha of the Sekrikin, which we also learned in the Mishnah. Lokach Maneisha, if a person buys a property and he first buys it from the wife. Now this is a property that was designated for the wife to collect for her ksubah. So he first pays the wife for this. And then only afterwards he goes to the husband, which is the real owner now, for this property, and he pays him. So in such a case, the sale is good. Because when he bought it from the wife, it's before he bought it from the husband. So she can't say that I only was ready to sell it because I see that my husband wants to sell it. She doesn't see anything. The husband didn't even decide to sell it yet, and she already agreed. But if the man went first to buy it mina-ish, to buy it first from the husband, and then and then he goes to the wife to buy the property, then the sale is bottled, because the wife could say, I only agreed because I saw my husband wants to sell. I didn't want to do anything against what he wants. Unless when she sells the property to this person, she doesn't only write a shtar, but she writes, like Shmuel said, she writes a shtar with achrayas that she's taking responsibility even if it gets confiscated from any of the loans that she has. So we clearly see like Shmuel. So the Gemara says, Neime to heavy to yufta de Rav. Shall we say that this Braise refutes what Rav said, that even if it was just a shtar that was written, that's enough that the sale should be in effect? Amalach Rav. So the Gemara says, no, Rav will answer you, my achrayas Nami shtar. When the Braise here uses the expression of achrayis, it doesn't mean like Shmuel said, the achrayis if the property will be confiscated. Achrayis means a shtar. When you have a document and someone wants to come and take away this property from you, so you have a document to prove that you bought it. So that's sort of writing every shtar gives a certain achrayis that now you can prove that it belongs to you. So that's all the Braise meant, but not like Shmuel said, an additional achrayis if it was confiscated through a loan. Tana Rabbanon, we learned the halacha and Braise regarding the Sekrikin. Lokach min Sekrikin, the property was bought from the Sekrikin, and va'achla shalashanim b'fnei bailim. And this property was eaten in front of the original owner, the Yiddish owner of this property, for 3 years. Okay, so to understand what the Gemara is saying here, there's two details that we have to understand. First of all, this Gemara is talking about the takana that the Mishnah says afterwards regarding Sekrikin. What was the takana Chazal made in the Mishnah Achrayna? The Mishnah said, if you remember, the Mishnah said that Chachamim later came and made the following takana, that if you buy a property from a Sekrikin, that the sale will be in effect, but you're just going to have to go and pay the original owner a quarter of the price of that property that you did not pay the Sekrikin, because the Sekrikin sell the property for a little bit of a cheaper price, because they confiscated, didn't pay for it at all, so they give it to you for a cheaper price. So that difference, you have to go and pay the original owner, and if you pay that difference to the original owner, you can keep the property. So over here, this person bought the property from a Sekrikin, and he sits in the property, and he's there for 3 years. Now, what's the significance of 3 years? The halacha in the Gemara of Baba Basra is 3 years is a chazakeh that now you don't have to bring any document to prove your ownership. Until 3 years, the original owner that comes and says, you didn't buy this property from me. You're going to have to produce a document to show that you did buy it. But after 3 years, he can't have any tightness to you. Where's your star? You could say, I lost the star and you were quiet for 3 years. And if I claim that I bought it from you, I don't have to bring any additional proof. So after 3 years, and then v'chaza u'machra la'acher. This buyer from the Sekrikin went and sold it yet to another Jew. So now ein lebailam al lekeach sheni klum. Because there was a chazaka here of 3 years, so the original owner can have no tightness on the second buyer, and he can't come and say, my quarter that I was supposed to be paid, that was never paid. Nobody ever, that chelik that I was supposed to get, I never got. He can't have such a tightness. So the Gemara now explains what this brisa means to say. Hey chidami, what are we talking about over here? If the tightness over here is, the person is saying, the buyer is saying, I bought this from you, meaning I did exactly what Chazal said, that I have to pay you that difference, that quarter. I did, I paid you that quarter. So then why is it saying here in the Braisa that only the second buyer, you can't have any tightness to? Even the first buyer as well, once he has a chazakah of 3 years, he doesn't have to bring any proof at all that he bought it from the original owner and that he paid him, because after 3 years, you don't have to prove anything. So why is it saying in the Braisa only the second buyer doesn't have to prove this? If the buyer that's sitting now on the property is not claiming and saying that I bought it from you and I paid you what you deserve that quarter, so then I full of sheni namiloi. So even after 3 years, even the second buyer should not be allowed to sit in the field over here. The whole halacha of a chazaka is, if you have a taina, if you're actually saying that you paid for it and I bought it, stam to sit in a property as a squatter for 3 years, and then afterwards to say, it's mine, and you ask you, why is it yours? Because it's mine. I didn't buy it for you, but I'm here for 3 years. There's no such a thing. If he has no taina, so then there's no chazaka here at all. So what are we talking about? Rav Sheshes answers, La'olam, Deloy Katonle. Really, the second buyer has no taina. He's not claiming at all that the original yid, the owner, got paid what he deserves. He doesn't know. He's the second buyer. He has no idea what the person that sold it to him did. Did he pay him? Did he not pay him? But in such a case, here Bezdin will get involved, and this is a concept of ta'aninon, that when you have an inheritor that inherits a property and someone comes to argue that this doesn't belong to you, so Bezdin will come and argue for him in his place, or also for a buyer. Bezdin will come and argue in his place. And over here as well, Bezdin will argue and claim for this second buyer that Mistama, the first buyer, gave the original Yiddish owner his quarter that he deserves. And Rashi explains that even if there's an argument about whether Bezdin gets involved in such a way, it's not a usual thing, stam, for Bezdin to get involved. But even if you're going to say that Bezdin does not get involved to help him and taina for him, but over here in such a case, we know that definitely the first buyer went and paid that quarter to the original Yid owner, because otherwise he knows that he's not going to be able to keep this property. So there's a stam. We could assume that he definitely did pay, and therefore Bezdin will taina this taina for the second buyer, even without him taining so.
Why didn't he say it himself? Why does it say
the second buyer doesn't know. The reason why he's not taining is because Pasha doesn't know. He doesn't know what the first buyer, which sold him the property, did. So he can't taina himself or taina his body. But the Bezdin will taina this for him, assuming that this is what happened. But ve'idach, the first person himself, the person that bought it directly from the Sekrikin, and he paid the Yiddish owner the quarter that he deserves, if he's going to taina this clearly, so then he can keep the property. But v'loi time, if the case over here is that he himself is saying, he's not arguing that he paid that, then we're not going to taina that for him, because he himself has to taina it for himself. He knows what happened. He can't rely on Bezdin taining for him. So therefore the Braisa said only the second buyer could keep it after the chazaka of 3 years, because Bezdin, without his taina, Bezdin will taina for him. Tana Rabbana, on another halacha we learned in the Braisa. Haba machmas chayv. If you have a guy that confiscated a property from a yid, but not like this case of the Sekrikin. Again, the Sekrikin here were people that were wild and dangerous, and they would threaten to kill Yidden, and they came and confiscated properties. But over here, we're talking about a guy that's confiscating a property from a yid because the yid owed him money, and he didn't have money to pay, so the guy is confiscating the property. Or umachmas anpuris. Anpuris is when a guy comes and takes a property, just steals it from you. So it's not because of a loan, but even this anpuris is still not like a sekrikin. Sekrikin were the people that were dangerous and they were going to kill you. But anpuris is stam gzeila, a guy that comes and steals it from you. Ein boy mishum sekrikin. The halacha that the Mishnah said regarding sekrikin does not apply over here. Now, what is the halacha that the Gemara is referring to over here of sekrikin that does not apply over here? So Rashi explains that by sekrikin, the Mishnah said, the takana, that after 12 months that the property was there in the hands of this sekrikin, and the yid that the property was confiscated from does not show up, does not say anything. So then we say that because the yid is afraid of this sekrikin, the fact that he just left it in the hands of the sekrikin is because he's afraid of him. He's afraid that he's going to kill him. So therefore the yid gave up on it, and now any other yid can go and buy it from this sekrikin, and he just has to give a quarter to the original owner, but he can buy it and keep it. And the reason you can buy it from the sekrikin and keep it is because we assume that because of the danger, the original owner gave up. But over here, by these cases of a chayiv and an amperis, there's no such assumption, because this is not a situation of a danger. So even after 12 months, the original owner is still planning on taking this guy to a court and taking it back from him. He just didn't get around to it. He didn't have a court available. He didn't have a court date, or he couldn't take him to court yet. So therefore, even after 12 months, you can't buy it off of this sekrikin. You have to allow the original owner to go and redeem it from him, from this the guy that took it for the chayiv or a stam gzeila amperis. Now the Braisa concludes, it says, the amperis atzma tzricha shetisha shnei masa chaydesh. Amperis itself, so after 12 months, when a guy comes and steals it, so after 12 months, then you can go and buy it from this guy. So the Gemara right away asks, this is a contradiction. V'ha'amrit, we just said, Einba mishom sekrikin. That when it comes to amperis, a guy that stam steals a property, the halacha of a sekrikin that after 12 months the yid gave up and you can buy it from him does not apply there. So the Gemara answers, you're right. You have to read the Braisa, Hochi ka'ama. This is what the Braisa says, sekrikin atzma. By the sekrikin himself, that a yid is now allowed to go and buy it from him and keep it, that's only after 12 months. Only after 12 months do we say that the original Yiddish owner gave up on this. Rav Yosef said, Naktinon, we know that ein amperus bebavel. There's no amperus in Bavel, which would simply sound like he's saying that a situation like this, where Goyim come and steal, confiscate properties from Yidden, this doesn't happen in Bavel. So the Gemara asks, that can't be. But we see that it does happen in Bavel, that Goyim do such things. Eloima, rather, what Rav Yosef meant to say is, ein din ampuris bebavel. The halacha, the din of ampuris does not apply in Bavel. Right? What's the halacha we just said about ampuris? That when a guy confiscates a property from a yid, no yid could go and buy it from that guy. And even after a long period of time, even after 12 months. Why? Because the din of ampuris is, the assumption is that the original owner is still planning on getting it back from this guy. He did not give up on it yet. And because there's no danger by amperis like there is by sekrikin. But that din does not apply in Bavel. My time, why? Because kiv and the davar, because Bavel is different. In Bavel, the courts, the bezdin or a court is very available. There's always an available court to take this guy to. And v'lo yazel. And this yid didn't go to a court in this period of time. So kabul, it must be that he accepted upon himself. Eime achule achle. So then what we say is definitely the Yid gave up, he was Meichel, he gave up on this property. Either he was Meyayish, or from the beginning he was afraid of this guy, even though it's not Sekrikin, it's only Amperis, he was afraid of him, and therefore he did not take him to court. So therefore in Bavel, even by a regular Amperis, after a long period of time, we know that the Yid gave up on it, and any other Yid could go and buy the property and keep it, as long as he pays the original owner the difference, just like by Sekrikin. Another story related to this halacha, Gidol bar Re'iloi. There was a fellow by the name of Gidol bar Re'iloi, Kibel are betaske mipnei bageh. So he got a property from a taske, which is a big valley, that there are many people, many landowners there in this valley. So now what's the story over here with this land, with this valley, with all the landowners? And Rashi explains that the Seder was then that they all had to pay a tax. But who paid the tax? All the landowners in this one big valley gave together their percent of what tax they had to pay for their property. And then there was one individual that went and brought the payment of the tax to the king. Okay? But now the thing is, what happens if one of the landowners left? He's not here. He still has to pay. The king will still come and collect the tax from his property, even if that person left town. Doesn't make a difference. So what happens? The one that's going, this gabbai, so to speak, that's going to bring the tax to the king, he has the rights to go and eat and use this property of this person that left. and then he goes and pays himself the percent of the taxes that he has to pay for the king. Because the Seder was, the king would collect the taxes from the one that's actually using this property. The king didn't want to hear any excuses, or that this guy is out of town, he's not here, he's not planting his field this year, it's empty, so he doesn't have to pay tax. The king wanted to get the pay of the taxes from all the properties. So if the guy left, so then someone else would go and occupy his field and eat from it, and he would pay the share of the tax for that property which he is now using. So now this fellow, Gidl Bar Eloi, so he went and was basically occupying one property and paying the taxes of that property from certain people of this valley here that left. So what did he do? Aktem v'yoev zuzit l'klas shani. He went and paid the taxes for that property that he's now occupying from these people that left, not only for this 1 year, but he paid the taxes for 3 years. You paid ahead in advance 3 years. Now, l'soif, in the end of this 1 year, the original owners from these properties that he was occupying and paying the taxes for them returned. So Amrulei, so they said to Gidl Bar Eloi, Shat the Kamaisa the Yavis Achlis. So for the year now that you paid the tax and you occupied our property and you ate the produce from our property, as I mentioned, that was the Seder, that whoever was paying the tax occupied the property. So fine, that's yours. But Hashte Ananya Vinon and Ananachlinon. Now we want to take back our properties and occupy the field and eat from it, and we're going to pay our share of taxes for these coming years. Now the thing is, Rashi explains what's going to happen over here is, you may say, what do you mean? He paid it already in ahead, the taxes, he paid for 3 years. So for 2 years he already paid the taxes. Now these property owners that came back and are going to use this property, why should they have to pay again taxes for these upcoming 2 years? But Rashi explains that that's the way the Seder was. That the property tax has to be paid for the people that are occupying the tax presently. So when these property owners come back and are eating from their properties in these coming 2 years, even though the property tax was already paid, it doesn't matter. They're going to have to pay their property tax again for these years that they're going to occupy it. So now Gidl Bar Eloi says, but so that means that I had a loss here. I paid extra taxes for the time that I ate, and now I have a loss. I want you to pay me back for these extra taxes that I paid here for the next 2 years. Or he says, otherwise allow me to occupy these properties for these 2 years, and then I won't have to pay for those extra taxes because I already paid for those years. So they came to Rav Papa. Also, they came to Rav Papa. So Sava lemichtav leitirpa abnei bage. So Rav Papa felt that Gidl Bar Eloi is right, that there's no reason he should have a loss, and he wanted to write him a shtar tirfa, which is a document to give him the right to confiscate that amount of the extra taxes that he paid from these landowners that want to take back their properties. They can take it back, zuntahait, and they'll eat from their properties and they'll pay their taxes. But the extra taxes that Gidl Bar Eloi paid in advance, that these landowners are now causing him this loss, they should pay him back. That's what Rav Papa held. Amalei, I want to again.
Kicked him out from the feld also.
Yeah, he told Gidl Bar Eloi that you have to leave the property, give it back to the landowners. You're going to lose the 2 years of taxes that you paid. So he wanted to give him the right to go and collect from them, from their property, for this loss that he's having. So Amalei, Rav Yeshua, Rav Papa. So Rav Yeshua tells Rav Papa, why? Why does this Gidl Bar Eloi have the right to collect from them? Imkei nasisa sekrikin. You're considering this case to be similar to the sekrikin. So Rashi explains that this means that this king that was collecting the taxes here, you're considering this king to be like a sekrikin, which means that now that the king, being like a sekrikin, forced to pay the taxes, and Gidl Bar Eloi went and paid those taxes, so now he can go and keep that taxes that he paid for himself, and he could force the real landowners to come and pay him for it. Similar to a sekrikin, where the land is being confiscated from the true owners, and now another Yid could come and buy it from the sekrikin against the will of the original owner. Over here as well, it's a similar concept. This king is being looked at, that he's like a sekrikin forcing this pay of taxes, and now Gidl Bar Eloi could force the original owners to pay him. So Rav Yeshua is asking, but why are you doing this? This is not considered to be like a sekrikin. Why not? Because what happened over here? Did the king force Gidl Bar Eloi to pay these taxes in advance? He didn't force him. Gidl Bar Eloi went on his own and decided to pay these taxes in advance. So in such a case, it should be Gidl Bar Elai's loss. It's not something which is like a sekrikim. So therefore, Ravuna Bereder Rav Yeshua says, the fact that he decided to pay these taxes in advance, it's like you put your money on the horn of a deer that runs away, and it's his loss. No one asked him to pay this money in advance. How could he force now the original owners to pay him back, to reimburse him for the loss that he has? If you wanted to pay in advance, it's your choice. It's not like a sekrikin where the money was being forced out against your will, and therefore the original owner should have to reimburse you for this. Okay, going back to the Mishnah, it said in the Mishnah, Zu Mishnah Rishayna. The Mishnah Rishayna said that if you buy a land from a sekrikin and then you buy it from the original owner, the whole sale is null and void. But Shalachreyan Amru, the next generation came and said, Halekech min hasekrikin, when you buy the property from the sekrikin, so you can keep the property, the sale is good, but as long as Noisan L'Bailam Revia, because you bought it from this sekrikin for a cheaper price, you have to give the original owner a quarter of this property, that difference that you didn't pay the original owner. So here the Gemara will explain, when it says a quarter, what exactly does a quarter mean? So Rav says, okay, so before I read the Gemara inside, when you say the quarter here, the quarter here could be one of two things. There's the true price of the property, which is more expensive, and there's the actual price of the property that he actually paid right now. Right? So when it says over here a quarter, it means a quarter of what price? Of the true price of the property? Or a quarter of the actual price that he paid right now? So Rav says, Revia bekarkai, Revia b'mois, you pay back a quarter. And you can pay back that quarter whether with a piece of land or with money. Well, now, as we'll see soon, the Gemara will explain what Rav is saying is it's a quarter of the actual price that you paid. Not of the true value, but of the actual price of the property that you paid. That's what Revia here means. But Shmuel says the Revia here is not a Revia of the actual price you paid, but it's a Revia of the actual value of the karka. Revia bekarka. Now when Shmuel here says Revia bekarka, he means to say that you have to pay the original owner a quarter of the actual price of the karka. Shehein shlish b'mois, which will come out to be a third of its value. Okay, here the Gemara will explain. We'll see. So b'maika miflagi, what is the argument here between Rav and Shmuel? Mar Sovar, Shmuel's opinion is Naki Revia Zovin, that when the property was bought, so it was bought a quarter less of its value. Okay, so what this means over here is, what did he pay for this property? Let's say he paid for the property $100. The price that he paid $100, he paid a quarter less in its true value. Revia here means a quarter less than the true value of the property. So if you paid $100 and we're saying that you paid a quarter less of the true value of the property, what would that mean? The true value of the property would be $133. And he paid $100, that's a quarter less of the true value of the property. So $133, so you have 4 times 33, and he paid a quarter less, which is $100. That's the pshat of Revia Bekarka. So how much are you going to have to give to the owner? The difference that you pay cheaper here, you're going to have to give him $33. That's the Revia Bekarka that Shmuel says. Shehein shlish b'mois, which is going to be a third of the actual price that you paid over here for this property, right? Because he actually paid $100. So then he's going to have to give $33 for the actual price that he paid, which is a quarter of the true value of the karka. That's Shmuel. On the other hand, Rav holds Mar Sova Naki Chumshizovin. No, Rav says that really the actual price that you paid, so it was a fifth of the true value of the property. So what's Rav saying? Rav says that the true price of the property is $125, not $133, but $125. So when you paid $100, so the $100 that you paid is going to be, from the true price of the property, you're paying a fifth less. Why? Because the real price of the property is $125. 125 is 5 times 25. So you paid only $100. That's a fifth less of the price of the property. Now, regarding the actual price that you paid, that's a quarter. If you paid $100, so regarding the actual price, $25 is a quarter of the actual price that you paid. So again, the point over here is the machlokes of Rav and Shmuel in the lashon of Revia in the Mishnah is Rav holds Revia refers to the actual price that you pay, which is $100, so Revia would be $25. And Shmuel says that the Lashon Revia and the Mishnah means to the real price of the property, which is $133. And therefore you're paying $33 from that real price of the property. So the Gemara here brings a brayse that seems to be a clear raya to what Rav said. Meisvei zu Mishnah Rishayna. So in a brayse it goes through the same thing that it said in the Mishnah. That in the beginning it said that if you buy a property from a Sekrikin and then from a Yid, the sale is null and void. But then the later Bezin came and said, Alekech mana Sekrikin, and you buy a property from a Sekrikin, so then you can keep it. But Naisan Labailam Revia, you have to just give the owner a quarter of the difference in the cheap price. And v'yad bailam al yaina, and additionally, the bailam, the original owner, always has the upper hand. Ratzu bekarka noitlin, if they want to go and take their property itself and redeem it and pay the price for it, they can go and take it. And ratzu b'mois noitlin, if they want to allow this yid that's buying it and then pay them the difference, so then the yid could buy it. But now Masai, when is this? Bizman she'ein b'yadon likach. That's if the original owner does not have money to pay for the field here. If they have money to pay for it, so then they come before everybody else. Again, so let me just clarify. Before, when it said Ratzu bekarka noitlin, it means to say the pay of that quarter difference. The pay of that quarter difference, they could either get that payment from the karka itself, or they can get that payment from money. And then the Brisa says, but if the original owner wants to go and buy the whole property for himself, we have to give him the option to buy it himself first. And then, as it said in our Mishnah as well, Rabbi Hoishiv Bezdin v'nimnu, Rabbi sat down at Bezdin and took account and made another takana, Shem Shasa b'fnei Sekrikin Shnei Masachaydesh, if it was in the hands of the Sekrikin already for 12 months, Kol HaKodim Likach Zocha. So then, whoever comes first can go and buy it. The original owner does not have the first right to go and buy this property. Aval, but then the Brisa concludes, Naisan labailem revia bekarka or revia b'mois. But you are going to have to give the difference to the original owner, a revia of karka or a revia of money. So the Gemara now understands, because it says this lashon of either revia karka or revia b'mois, it means like what Rav said, that the revia is from the mois, meaning from the actual price that you paid, which is $25 out of $100. Not like Shmuel said, $33 from the real price of the karka, which is $133. That's what it's mashma in the lashon of the Brisa. Ravashi says, no, according to Shmuel, that's not what the Brisa means. Ki tanya hi la'acha shabo moas liyodai. The lashon of the Brisa, revia b'mois, does refer to the full price after the original owner gets back the reimbursement of those $33. If you take the full sum of the real price of the property into account, then it'll be a revia of that price of $133, which is $33. Not like Rav said, which is only $25 out of $125, which means that it's really only a fifth of that the property was only cheaper, a fifth of the price that it was. Okay.